It is 7:33. We are back in open session. Item number 3A, the board will discuss the recommended personnel report. Do we have any motions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Rudy.
so move to approve the recommended personnel report as discussed in closed session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Mancha. Do I have any discussion? There being no discussion, can I call for the vote? All those in favor? Looks like the ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Item number 3B, the board will discuss the superintendent's recommendation for the appointment of an athletic director and subject to future reassignment by the superintendent TGC 551.074. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Moreno.
I'd like to approve Mr. Isaac Martinez as athletic director and subject to future reassignment by the superintendent.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Moreno. I have a second by Ms. Carrillo. Do I have any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr.
Mr. Madrigal, if you would please, I think Mr. Soto as well, then we can, then you remind Mr. Martinez that we value the competition versus our neighboring school district in athletics. I know for about 4 years we weren't competing with South San in football and baseball and basketball. And we brought it back last year, so you can make it aware to Mr. Martinez. That's high priority for us here on the school board. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Moreno.
just to answer some of Mr. Abuna's question, I've had that conversation with the superintendent from South San ISD, so that's something we discussed going into the next realignment, which will be after this year.
Any further discussion? We have a motion, we have a second, we had some discussion. Can I please call for the vote? All those in favor of Mr. Rudy's motion? All those against? Okay, the motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Martinez. Item number 3, no action needs to be taken on that. Okay, now like I said, what we're all here for. The board, item number 5, the board will conduct a budget work session with the superintendent and staff for the 2007-2017 budget. Mr. Hernandez, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. As you stated, the budget work session scheduled for today is for the 2017-2018 year. We've placed in front of you the hard copy of the budget presentation, which looks like this, and then you've also got another copy that deals with the CASB study and contract that we did with them in order to process our analysis of our recommended pay increases for the 17-18 year. But as we will progress through the presentation, the items that we want to cover this evening will be a look at our fund balance trend as we do every year to see where we're at on our ADA and as it compares to where we're at in the fund balance. It provides us the available funds to continue and maintain our operations despite the limited resources that we get from the state. The second item that we'll cover is the state funding and kind of recap what we received from the state last year, what we project for this year, for this coming year. After that, then we look at our budget items that affect the resources that we're looking at and in our projections. Then we look at our fund balance and where it lands as far as in regards to the budget, and then we'll look at a 6-year vision taking us all the way to 21-22. So if I'll begin, if you look on slide 3 or on your hard copy, this is a bar graph that we look at every year. One of the major impacts, as we know and as we learn, the more that we're on the board and the more that we go through our district operations, is our average daily attendance, which short term, our acronym for that is the ADA.
Mr. Chair. So next time you present, can you also include our enrollment I know that's here in this graph as well, if you don't mind, please.
Sure,
Right there.
absolutely.
Mr. Chair, what number were we at, sir, on the enrollment?
Good question. That's what I've got for this evening. So we look at where we're at for what we're projecting for the 16-17 year. The ADA is 13,365 based on the 5-6 weeks reports that we've received. The enrollment for this year is 14,831. So what that represents is about a 90% attendance rate. In looking at past years, when we look at for 15-16, the ADA was 13,589, and our enrollment last year was 15,272. So you can see there's a steady decline. And when we looked at, one of the things that Mr. Mothergo had us look at was looking at the leavers. And these are the kids that have left the district, but in total. So every year you'll have kids leaving the district and then you have kids coming in. But if we just look at the amount of kids that have left the district, it's about 1,500 kids. But remember, we also have kids coming in. But just looking at that data, 11% of those kids leaving the district represented kids going to charter schools. So that comes out to about 178 kids. The remaining kids are the ones that go to different school districts. And that represents about 89%, which is about 1,372.
So real quick, so do you have a 14-15 enrollment there with you?
No, sir, I don't have that, but I can certainly get that for you.
Thank you. Let me ask you this, when you said 1,500, from what year to what year? From
This year,
to when?
just for this year. 15, 16. 16, 17. Too many years.
Yeah, Mr. Maria, I don't, this is, so that's kind of low, 90%. That can be correct, because elementaries run about 96%, middle schools about 94%, high schools should be about 92%, average that out. I don't know. If we can discuss that in the curriculum committee, just some data on attendance at our schools, that's kind of.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I did add, to answer Mr. Boon's question, those are some of the questions and go get the information, get the data for us, was that I shared with Mr. Hernandez, and again, that's one of the things that he's currently working with Dottie, because those are some of the things that we are looking at with it as a district, but again, Mr. Hernandez will go back and
Yes,
I know you're already working with Dottie on that information.
Yes, sir, absolutely, absolutely. But it gives you an idea of where the kids are going. That was interesting for us because especially with the charter school catty-corner to us. But most of the students leaving were going to other school districts, and the ones that receive more of our kids, and we probably receive equal amounts coming back into our district. San Antonio for this year, 351 of our kids went to SAISD, and about 156 kids went to South San ISD. So we're working on the data. It's more meticulous and tedious to try to find those kids that actually come back into the district and what districts they're coming from, and even the charter schools if they're coming back from any charter schools. So one of the things that we have in the last slide on this presentation is the calendar and what we're looking at as far as for the dates for our budget workshop. So one of the next budget workshop that we're planning on having and also holding a meeting for that is going to be June 6th. So that's a tentative. We'll work with all the board members to make sure it's an agreeable date for everyone. But it's a date, it's a meeting we need to have because after our presentation this evening, then we're going to be proposing a tax rate. And what the board does in that case is they approve the tax rate in order for us to officially publish a notice, but the actual adoption of the tax rate isn't until August when we receive the certified values. But I'm bringing this out so that way as these kind of questions come up, we will come back with more information at our next budget planning workshop on June the 6th. So this gives us a trend of where we're at on our budget and where we're looking at as far as our fund balance. We've been able to maintain a minimal deficit of what we initially were projecting, and some of the reasons for those, and we'll cover those as we go through the slide, is the effect of the efforts that we do to get reimbursed through Medicaid. It's called the SHARPS program. But also, one of the impacts that we get that the states always have to do is they have to equalize funding. And one of the criteria they do is they look at school districts to bring them to equalize funding to the wealth of what they use as Austin ISD. So they call it the Austin ISD yield. And so as their property values go up, then the district's requirement in order to earn that same amount of state money as what they would get actually brings additional monies to school districts. But again, ADA has an impact because it kind of flips it where if you have a property value, if you get more ADA, then you become a lower wealth district, which means then you get additional state money. But as your kids start dropping and your ADA drops, then you actually become richer because now you have more property value to distribute over less kids. So it's a theme that all are primarily, we need our kids here for instruction, but it then has an impact on our finances. When we looked at how we started the school year with our fund balance that's available, we look at this pie chart. And so at the very top of the pie chart, we look at the child nutrition. Again, that's a self-sustaining program with federal reimbursements. Our program provides free meals, both breakfast and lunch, provides snacks for the students, and supports them in their nutrition. Again, so based on the operations and the support that the campuses give the program, especially we're unique in our school district because many of our meals are taken to the classroom instead of having kids come by through a cafeteria, but it provides a higher meal count, which brings in additional revenues for the program. Anything earned in that program need to only benefit the child nutrition program. We've also got, as part of our fund balance of $58 million, we've got a set aside of about $3.2 million. Again, that's been setting aside. We're looking at our facilities, primarily the issue that we have at Gillette, and that money is set aside to address that whenever action needs to be taken. After that, one of the initiatives of the board that's been in place for quite a number of years is as we built up our fund balance and we made some, the board made some changes in issuing bonds and refunding bonds and moving debt over from general fund over to the debt service. That resulted in the district being able to build up its fund balance. And on the previous chart, you saw the ADA that peaked out in 13-14, where we're at 13,921. But as we grew up to that amount, it added monies into our fund balance. So we're able to set aside $25 million, which represents roughly 2.5 months worth of operations. On top of that, then at the end of 16, we had $25.5 million still available for the district. So one of the things that we look at is we still have programs that we need to run. We know that the state, in fact, they're meeting in the 85 legislature right now, and they still haven't come out with a bill on funding. So the best that we can do is go based on current funding formulas and try to do our estimates and build our budget on that. So when we look at state funding, as you can see for the 15-16 year, our ADA then was $13,589. That generated $123.3 million, including our property taxes along with that. But for 15-16, the ADA, as we just talked about, went down to $13,365. The saving rates for the district that we're projecting for 16-17 is the amount of the yield, and the Austin, what I just mentioned is the Austin yield. So because in order, with their property values going up and the state's requirement of trying to equalize funding, that helped us generate some additional monies that initially we had budgeted $122 million. We're looking at a shortfall of 120. But then looking at costs that we were incurring during the year and controlling those costs, that's why we could minimize the kind of loss that we're looking at for 16-17. So as I said, using current funding formulas, because the state still is in legislation and deciding how to fund public schools, we have to use the current funding formulas. And the way we project the additional monies to bring in is $124 million in order to support our current operations. So the next items that we want to cover is how we went about in,
Can you go back one slide?
yes, sir.
So this year we're at about 13,365 of ADA, so you're kind of projecting
13,000.
an increase next year?
Yes, sir. I'm hoping that we get higher. If not, again, we're looking at funding formulas and what we've received from them is called House Bill 21.
Okay.
And so on that one, they're looking at $1.8 billion from the House, $580 million from the Senate. And by the time they come together, hopefully that will provide us at least with money that we're using in our calculations and what we're using to support our budget, that funding formula will support the revenues we're calculating. Yes, sir. So the items we want to cover is our teacher allotments. We go through that every year. We look at what our enrollment is, what our teacher requirements are. We have a campus that's going into its 4th year and some positions that have arisen because of some of the movements we made to for the 16-17 year, in particular our transition school going to Joe Wetzel, and then having our STEM going into their 4th year. We looked at our current operations in our staffing, some requirements coming out of Title II that forced us to do some personnel realignments, and then for our salaries and wage increases, we made the investment these last 2 years to set up a pay range for classified, and then this last year for our paras and our professionals. So in working with TASB, then we also have TASB this year working with us to maintain the results of those studies and then make a proposal, having them work through that and then providing us information so that we could come back with a recommendation of the salaries and wage increases. The last item is the health insurance contribution. This basically is a follow-up of a discussion by the board and the superintendent to see how we can try to support our employees with the continued increase of our health insurance, but also making sure that trying to do it incrementally instead of all in one fall swoop. So starting with our teacher allotments, one of the things that we always do is we look at, when we make changes on our teacher allotments, there are no individuals that lose their jobs. We look at vacant positions, and as every year, we know that we have turnover in teachers, either teachers leaving and creating vacancies. So when we look at our enrollment for our elementary schools, we look at it dropping by about 200. So the net reduction of teachers that need to be added at elementary school and teachers that needed to be reduced because of the enrollment netted to a net reduction of about 2 teachers. In looking at the secondary, one of the things that we found is that TEA has the guidelines for the fine arts program, and basically we've been non-compliant. The school districts at the middle school needed to offer 3 or 4 fine arts programs. And so right now we currently have an existing mariachi teacher, but the proposal here is for 2 additional theater arts teacher and 1 mariachi instructor.
So real quick, so those theater arts I need to secondary, are those middle school?
Yes, sir. So it's going to be 2 teachers to serve 2 middle schools each.
Like, kind of like the dance, not the dance, the choir? There's 2, right, or there's 4 now? 2, that should shared by, okay. So we're gonna do the same thing with this theater arts, okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair? And again, I guess we saw, Gallo's been out on your name, but basically right now, we need to make this effort to be in compliance with TA guidelines and for our middle schools to meet those requirements.
The mariachi instructor would be for the high school, because we built up the middle school. All our 8th graders will now be going into high school. We currently do not have a mariachi instructor. So the one mariachi instructor would go between Harlandale and McCollum, since we have the program at all.
So let me ask you this, so what kind of the certification, is it gonna be like one of those automotive type, or how do you classify oh, music, okay. Okay, thank you.
So taking the net of that, that's a cost of $57,800, because you got 3 teachers and 2 being vacant or reduced. The next area is looking at our campus continuing program. Specifically, it's our early college high school. We're going into the 4th year of the high school, which now we will have a senior class next year. And at the same time, of course, we got freshmen, sophomore, and juniors at that school. So given the amount of, or given that another class is being added to the high school, and the requirements of all of them attending in their curriculum or attending Alamo College, keeping track of their graduation degree plans, both for Palo Alto and for Harlandale, and then just meeting their social and emotional demands, a recommendation for the 17-18 year is 1 counselor.
Mr. Chair, so how many counselors will that be at the early college?
That will be 2. We currently have 1.
2 for 450-ish.
Right about 400. The thing is, pretty much all those 400 will be enrolled in some form of a college class, which the majority of our counselor right now spends her time as a liaison between. They're not getting service to have a comprehensive service to the kids. So one would be, they would both work, but one would be pretty much the liaison that works with that college, because the graduation requirements as per early college and T-STEM, they have to meet those blueprints.
And then the other one will be more of the social, emotional type.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair? When our board made that commitment for the STEM Early College High School, it was part of the 4-year plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
And then, Ms. Gallows, like y'all mentioned, we are presenting to the curriculum board, and then actually the last meeting about how the new structure is, that's what it would kind of correlate with, right? With this,
With what, sir?
with the traditional where you had everyone kind of sharing?
Yes.
Okay.
The next position is the engineer teacher. We're going into the 4th year of the Project Lead the Way program. One of the things that we're looking at is determining if the contact hours that they have with those students will earn us CAPE dollars, which will help offset the cost of that teacher, but for right now, we're putting in the budget to make sure it can be accommodated. The next position is a PE teacher currently. We're using staff from our secondary campuses to conduct the PE classes at Jewel Witzel. Remember, we moved our transition campus or students over to Jewel Witzel, but at the same time, we've got, again, 4 years of students there at early college high school, so the PE teacher has been splitting their time between both campuses.
Repeat that one more time, huh? What's the current situation with Witzel and STEM?
So what we have is, so at the Witzel Center, because we had transition there also, that increased the enrollment. So right now we have 1 teacher from each of the high schools, or our regular high schools, go there for PE. And then STEM is also serviced by a PE teacher that they share with the HEDA, and then she's at the HEDA, and then she's at STEM, and then another PE teacher from HAC. So the logistics of getting everybody there.
That's fine. Can you send us something on that in writing in our HH and who those employees are, please? Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez, I guess when it comes to engineer teacher, I know this would be an additional engineer teacher, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's correct.
Even without the personnel that we might have lost already. Could you remind me, the CTE funding, how much would actually be, I guess, funded by another agency, and how much would be kind of appropriated by us?
Correct. When we earn the contact hours under the CAPE program, the weight that the state places on that will depend on the number of students that are enrolled in it. What we can do for the next meeting is get that calculation and see if that would be enough to offset the teacher. In most cases it is, because they're teaching they're teaching all 7 periods, and all of those contact hours are eligible for CAPE. In a sense, they fund themselves. So that would help us offset it.
The budget cost would be less than 100?
Yeah, so then it would be less than that, but we want to make sure that we verify that with the state, because it's through their allotment, the current technology allotment that we get.
In addition, sir, it's part of the STEM blueprint, because we chose to do a project lead the way. This is the capstone course of that series.
The next area related to budget items is, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at personnel realignments, and this is where we look at the programs that we've been implementing. And that's all part of our 5 or 6 year vision that we started 3 years ago, is looking at how our programs are working, see what can be done to make them more efficient and more productive in serving our students. Excuse me. The one item that we've had in place for at least 2 to 3 years is the instructional coaches. And those were coaches that we took out as part of what we used to have as accelerated reader and accelerated math and accelerated reading teachers. So we consolidated that and made 16 teachers. And looking at the way that's being operated, we're looking that we can still meet that demand by not having one instructional coach. And currently we have 3 vacancies. So again, it's not eliminating an individual, but it's eliminating a vacancy position. The next area is then looking at our GT program. The original plan of that was, when we was first approved, we approved 7 GT teachers. The intent was then to have a pull-out program at the middle schools. But looking at the way it was being programmed and conducted, it's more of a push-in model. So that allows us then to free up 2 positions that will no longer be required, but then provide some type of savings for our alternate use of those funds. The next area is then we have support staff that we can use currently with our current auxiliary staff and paraprofessionals in CNI. So there's a vacancy. So again, they evaluated their staffing. They can see how they can do away with one of the vacancies. Using that funds and looking at what are the needs, we're looking at adding a bilingual facilitator and an early child administrator. Currently, we have 1,200 pre-K students in the district. We have 10 classrooms at the Finley Center, and so an on-site administrator would benefit the district and our pre-K students, and also serve as a liaison with our advanced program, our now ever-expanding pre-K 4SA program. We've actually gotten 2 grants out of that program, and then our community and schools and how they affect our current pre-K population.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, go ahead, Mr. Albanese.
No, but I've been holding it up. Go first, sir.
I was going to touch on the pre-K 3, pre-K 4. On our ADA, how are we counting their absences?
They're calculated as the same way that the rest of our attendance.
Okay, because I know they have a higher number of absences than any other class. And what are we doing to reprimand that and to make sure that we're following policy? Because I know that in one of the classes, which is my wife's class, she has one kid that's absent 3 times out of the week and only shows up 2. And they tell her that there's nothing they can do about that since it's a master program. So I know that's hurting our ADA because it's not only her class. So I mean, what is the benefit if we're losing so many days of absences to these kids? Are we losing a lot of benefit, or what, have we calculated what we're losing? And have we done some research and study how much is hurting us, whether we're actually gaining or losing money with this program?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mancha brings up a good point. It's a very valid point. It's a point that myself and staff have met with Becky Cervantes, with the CEO again from Avance, and it's been a big complaint of mine. But the bottom line is they serve under different guidelines and federal regulations, and basically their expectations of attendance and providing the family support and all those are different than the kids that we have in our pre-K 3 and 4. And I've showed her the data, I've talked to her about it, but their program allows them not to be able to eliminate them out of the program for attendance and things like that. It's been an ongoing deal. We meet with them on a monthly basis to discuss. We've shared that with them. It goes from attendance to shop records to things like that. And of course, when we weigh out the amount of teachers that Avance hires and pays for versus what we have to, it's a big, big benefit to Harlandale. But yes, we could do much better. We can get those kids to improve with their attendance, and it's an ongoing process. We continue to work with them. They continue to work with those families, but they are some very needy situations. But Mr. Mancha, you bring up a good point. Samantha, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Sir, one of the things that they were not doing is we keep our attendance and then Avance keeps theirs. And so we weren't getting their attendance. We now get it on a daily basis. We weren't having standing meetings with Ms. Cervantes and her staff. We now have that also. That is the #1 priority about how they address it, because they actually have family engagement staff that their full responsibility is about if you're out 3 days, you should go. Has the job been at the level it should be? No, sir. And that, as Mr. Monty thought, that is our biggest concern, because it does hurt us in the long run.
And I understand that, and we're not pushing them to follow protocol, their own policy. They're not following their own policy, and I feel that that's hurting our district, because when that ADA goes down, you're talking about maybe 1,000 kids in the whole district, and you only have half of them showing up. It's hurting our ADA. And you know that if we can enforce it and push it, I think that will increase our averages. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, again, to add to Mr. Rancho's concern, the data that we have does show that our pre-K 3 program with Avance do have the lowest average daily attendance of any grade level of any other in Harlandale ISD.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Is it because the Avance program, because the pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 are not mandatory to attend school? Is that a factor?
I do think that contributes to it.
It's not mandatory for them to be in
It is
school.
not mandatory. Kindergarten is not even mandatory.
No, it's not.
And I will tell you, when we look at attendance across our pre-K classrooms, our Finley Center has the lowest attendance, which is connected to Stonewall Flanders. They fall under, their roof. And that's one of the reasons that we are seeking approval of an early childhood. Right now, there is not per se someone who, even though it is Stonewall, because of the number at the actual Stonewall building, there's not per se someone who's constantly watching 10 classrooms where our attendance is the lowest across the district.
So my question was, who's funding? So you want us to fund this early child administrator, or is it going to get funded through Avance or through some other grant?
No, it's funded through the district.
So do we currently have who's the top administrator for early childhood right now?
For right now, the top administrator would
Well,
be,
for the program itself. You don't have a coordinator or director running an early child?
not early childhood, no, just elementary as a whole. but not early childhood.
Nobody runs the program itself. No one works to, so who's the direct contact to with Avance then?
Ms. Cormans or myself.
Oh. So when you say administrator, what title of administrator are you referring to?
Mr. Chair, it's not a, like a principalship, it's just an administrator to oversight the campus, because again, Stonewall Flanders, it happens to be one of our.
Oh, this is only at Stonewall Flanders.
The administrator would be housed at Stonewall Flanders, but that administrator would oversee all of pre-K.
So the title would be administrator, coordinator, director. What exactly would that title be?
It's pretty much the way we treat the Joe Wetzel administrator. It's not a principalship pay, it is an administrative pay, kind of a coordinator pay, but not administrative. If that did, or Mr. Or, I don't know, maybe you.
No, sir, I mean, you.
It's hard for me to explain, but the Joe Wetzel campus, we do have a principal there, or we do have an administrator, but we don't title that as a principal.
So Mr. Studek, so principal, director, coordinator, what does this administrator fall?
Looking at hearing the proposal, it would fall under, it'd be below principal, below coordinator. It's probably somewhere between an assistant principal and a.
Like I said, all right, thank you.
Because as I understand the presentation, this position is 203.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Duty.
And then, I guess, in going with those questions, Ms. Gallo, so they're being housed at Stonewall, would their responsibilities also encompass the Stonewall campus, or would it just be focused solely on just the Family Center?
It would
those
be
10 classrooms?
housed at the Finley Center, sir, but it would actually encompass all pre-K. Because we do have 2 pre-K mentors, but again, it's because where it is, there's 10 pre-K classrooms there, and there's not an administrator.
So they're gonna be housed at Finley, because I heard Stonewall first.
Stonewall,
Okay,
I thought it was
okay.
Stonewall.
Just making sure, because then I was trying to see if they were gonna have other duties and responsibilities, so I didn't know that was gonna take away from, I just wanted that clarification, thank you.
Right. The next item then on the realignments is really because of new rules and compliance requirements under our Title II federal program. There are certain duties that a teacher can perform and be funded under Title II. So when we looked at the staffing that we had and looked at what duties they were doing, it forced us to make some reductions there. So in working with the schools, we ended up with a net 2 positions that actually got reduced, again, vacancies, so that way that provided funding for the district. Even though it's Title II money, what has happened over the last few years with the federal and their sequestration is that the funding for Title II has been dramatically reduced. Each year we look at what amount of the cost for these teachers that exceed what that grant is, and then we fund the difference out of the local fund. So anytime we can make reductions in the Title II where we still benefit the students, then it indirectly actually benefits the local funding. So that's why we see it as a net savings. Right? The next item is then we looked at our current marketing plan that we've got, and again, trying to get the word out, our efforts of trying to increase our enrollment, trying to keep students here, explaining all the benefits that we receive. The board had approved sometime back as part of our budget plan, a marketing plan for about $57,000. When we look at our current staffing, we currently have the PIO, publications editor, and then 2 support staff. When we look at what the requirements are and the kind of things that we've been seeing that we can do with that communications department is not only doing videos, producing a magazine, but one of the things that has really impacted a lot of schools, and we received inquiries actually from our fellow districts, is what is our school district doing regarding the ADA compliance regarding our webpage. There's some unique things that need to be done as far as when an individual who's on our webpage has site problems. that when they hover over a certain part of the webpage, it needs to explain to the individual, what is it that they're looking at. So it's gotten more complicated as far as what we need to provide on our webpage. So what we're looking at is like, as I said on this slide, it's a realignment. Taking one of those auxiliary positions, paraprofessional positions, using the funds for that, but then looking at making that into professional position at the same level that we've got as a publications editor. So again, but at the same time, using the monies that we had set aside from our marketing plan to fund what that difference would be, so it wouldn't be an additional cost and take away from the savings that we're showing from the previous two bullets that we just discussed. So the net amount of this realignment is providing a net savings of $199,379. The next area, and most important area for our district, because this is how we reward our employees and for all the great service that they provide to our students and to the district and the community.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, can you go back?
Yes, sir.
How was this? It's the last bullet. I'm a little confused. I heard what you were saying.
Yes, sir.
So you're gonna realign the marketing plan to utilize staffing. I don't know. Well, I guess I missed it. What exactly are we doing with this bullet?
So what we've got right now is, we've got set aside $57,000. Remember, we used to contract that out and an individual would do that. The last 2 years, I believe, is when we stopped with that, using that contractor and started doing a lot of things in-house. So in order to provide that support, we have a public information officer, a publications editor, and that's a professional, and then we have 2 support staff. So what we're looking at is converting one of those support staff and making that into a publications editor. It's a brand new position, has to be applied for, and in order to fund, of course, you have a professional position, you have an auxiliary position. There's a difference between the wages there. So in the monies that we set aside, which was initially going to be for that marketing plan, reducing that amount and using that amount to make up the difference.
So basically we go from PIO, editor, 2 support staff, to PIO, 2 editors, 1 support staff.
Exactly.
So, and the reason we need this editing person is because of this ADA compliance. So just me thinking out, there's no way with technology or any of those people that can assist her with this.
Well,
technology has a large staff as well.
It's not only the district's webpage, but as well as looking at all our web pages that we have at our campuses. So this individual would be working with those campuses to make sure that their web pages are not only up to date, but also ADA compliant. But one of the other things too that I guess you could say we're fortunate with one of our auxiliary positions is that the things that we realized because of that individual's talent, but not saying that they would get this job, is that we realized we can produce our own videos. And I think we posted some of those on our webpage, and that's the kind of work we want to maintain. But then in order to maintain that level, the reason we're recommending publications editor is to provide a position that's at that kind of high level and not have that expectation.
I think I understand, but this just two comments. I think technology, even with the approval of this editor, I think technology should still be involved to some extent.
Oh, yes, sir.
And to Mr. Madrigal, I mean, I think I'd be supportive in the sense that based on the second point, our enrollment's been declining, so that's something where that, like I said, not necessarily extra support as far as people-wise, but extra support as the skills that person brings in. Maybe we can increase our publication and try to keep our students. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that kind of brought this to light, because we recently received, and we got a hold of, or somehow we saw this, but our catty corner again, looking at who our competition is, which is the Idea School. We saw very nice, well put together, but again, we know Idea's national. But you know, to put that type of material together, you know, you need somebody who's gonna spend the time to do that. So that, exactly, that's one of the big things of this, is trying to advertise our district and keep up our enrollment. Okay, now the next part is regarding our salaries and wages. And again, taking advantage of the investment that we've made over the last 2 years in providing a good competitive pay structure. One of the things we did with TASB this year is to contract with them throughout this year. Well, we started at the beginning of the year because we needed to provide them data and keep them informed on what we're doing. So basically, they went through and they looked at, you know, what needs to be done to maintain our current pay structures, any adjustments that based on their market analysis, taking that data and then coming forward with some recommendations that we can bring to the board that we support as general pay increases. And then, like I said, they keep trying to keep us positive on our marketing standing with other districts. So this evening, what we have is the individuals that have been with us in these last 2 years and bring us along on providing this pay study, which is Luz Cadena and Zach Cobb. So what I'd like to do is have them come up and do their presentation of their pay study, and that's the second booklet that you have placed in front of you, and I'll go ahead and pull up their PowerPoint.
Yeah, I knew those guys look familiar.
All right. Well, good evening, board president, board members, and Mr. Madrigal. It's a pleasure to be back. And I'm Luz Cadena, and I have Zach Hobbs here. And we worked together last year, and we're working together again this year. As we've now transitioned from the pay study design, which was the project that we've had over the past 2 years, to now more a maintenance service. Basically, no big changes, looking at market, analyzing where you fall, and then recommending some small tweaks, and we'll be reviewing that. I'll be presenting that information overall. So the first page, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the process, which is very similar to the process when we did the pay system design. Basically collected all of your pay data. We reviewed it all over again. And we held this kickoff discussion. We talked about, you know, how are things, what has worked, what are areas that we still need to make some improvements in. And then we moved towards basically the market comparisons, and we're going to cover that, take a look at where you fall, given your market and the peer group. And then lastly, we have cost estimates for some of the improvements that we are presenting tonight. Just big picture, as far as understanding market pay, basically when we talk about market pay is your pay structures, particularly your midpoints, are connected to the market rates. And so we build your pay structures very connected or aligned to market. We also, in a market-based pay structure, want to see pay within the 10% of market, which is at 90 to 110%. So essentially, a market-based pay strategy is we want pay to be centered around the target rate of pay within 10% of market. We do see pay at 80%, and we do see pay at 120%. And sometimes those comparisons may be appropriate, especially for someone that's brand new, zero experience. But over time and with the pay increases to the midpoint, pay is moved through the range. And so eventually what we like to see is that pay clustered around that 10% of market. That's the market-based pay strategy. These are the same set of peer districts that we used in the pay studies that we've done the past 2 years. Just a side note, for single incumbent positions, central administrative positions. We removed the largest district so that we can get a closer apples to apples comparisons because there is a difference in program size. We're going to look at teacher salaries and how you compare. And so we wanted to start off with this comparison. This was a 15-16 teacher comparison when we conducted the pay study last year. And so the district overall, you were at market at entry, you were above market at year 2, and then at 15 and 20 year, you were about 2 to 3% below market. And so what we want to show and what we want to give the board and the administration kudos for is this year's market comparison for your teacher pay.
Mr. Chair. So just real quick, so the reason we 10 years and beyond the disparity is because we were going off the midpoint, and I know the last few years we were going off just the percentage. So I noticed in the second slide in this PowerPoint, it talks about going back to the midpoint. So I'm just curious when we get to that page.
Okay, sounds good. So yes, I mean we have the pay increase percentage being calculated for your teachers as a percentage of the average teacher pay in your marketplace. For your other employee pay groups, it is as a percentage of the range midpoint. But again, I just want to make sure that that as a board, as we're looking at your teacher comparison for this year, you can see here the gap and how we close that gap, particularly at your 15 and 20 years, and we have a much more kind of symmetrical alignment of your teacher pay at each of the 5-year intervals. And so I think that speaks a lot to the direction that we took last year, certainly to the pay increase and some of the adjustments that we were able to do, particularly at key points in the range to achieve this comparison this year. So this is basically the detail to that graph that we just saw. And you can see that overall you are at or 1% above market. And at year 15, it's 1% below, but certainly this is a huge improvement from where we were last year, particularly at 15 and 20 year mark. Then we also look at your stipends. And as you can see here, you're very competitive with your stipends and that you're at market median for the most part for all of the stipends. Now the one area that we did, that we made the one change that we made last year was that we moved away from this master's degree stipend schedule that basically the amount of that master's degree stipend became larger and larger based primarily on the teacher tenure experience and not necessarily the degree value. And so we moved away from that. We rolled pay into the teacher's salary and we set a master's degree stipend and in essence to kind of shift monies that would be available from one bucket to another one, and possibly considering moving to a subject area master's degree in the future as the district is financially able to support moving in that direction. And you can see this here. But in all of the other stipend areas, you are at the market median of those stipends, given those set of districts. We also looked at the teacher incentives. And again, for this category, similar trend, you are at or slightly above market. You're off, by a few hundreds in the other areas, but pretty much you are right there with the market. Then we also took a snapshot of the distribution of your teachers' experience. These are your current teachers, and it's teachers and librarians. And so basically what this shows is that The distribution of your total teachers from 0 to 10 years is about 61%. So you tend to have a little bit larger percentage of teachers with the less tenure because they're 0 to 10 years. And typically we kind of see a 50-50% distribution. But in this case, we have a little bit larger distribution for your 0 to 10 year mark.
Sure. So on that comment you just made 50-50, so you're telling me that north side, well, maybe not so much north side, they're like,
No.
let's say northeast,
Yeah.
you're saying that they're at 50-50?
No, I'm just saying statewide, not specifically one district, but overall
So my
statewide.
concern, Mr. Mali, I mean, we definitely need to work on this. We're not keeping our teachers at all. When 60% have under 10 years experience. Thank you.
And then the other takeaway from this is basically your 30 plus years of experience. So while it's 4% and it's that one little gray slice of the pie, it's about 50 teachers. And so, something that you have to keep in mind is that the number of teachers will be close to retirement, and just in the planning phase, to be able to be in a position for your teacher pay to be competitive as the need arises to fill those vacancies as they become available. We're going to move into market comparisons for your non-teaching staff. And you'll see this table. It has the different categories of the employee pay groups. And overall, what we'll see here is that the central administration, which includes your assistant soups, your directors, etc., we were able to benchmark 26 of your jobs to the jobs that we survey. And overall, the market comparison is at 96%. The other measurement that you'll see is how your midpoints compare to the market value. And basically that shows us or tells us that the pay structures are still connected to the market, or where we may need to make some adjustments to those pay structures so that you remain connected. You'll notice that on the campus administration, we were able to benchmark 9 of those positions to the market, and your overall market comparison for that group is at 99%. The midpoint comparison of the ranges for those positions is 1% above. Your professional support, that is overall 1% above market. The one category of jobs that basically is an area that we're looking at making some stronger adjustments in is the technology, where your market comparison overall is at 89% in that category.
Mr. Chair. So real quick, remind me, because I know we started this last year, so when we're looking at the technology, do you guys also consider the number of specialists and all that? Because I know I'm talking about the network specialists, technicians, all that. Just referring to the district I work for, I know that we have this, Harlem has probably 2 to 3 times more in that department itself. So, do y'all take that? I mean, Ms. Murray, I know that she wants to bump this one up just by that comment, but at the same time, we have to consider the number of staff members we have in that department for us just to say, okay, they're a little bit below market by percent, because you said the 10% rule.
Yes, for the 90%.
But at the same time, we have that department's it's staffed very well, so it's just a comment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and just to note, so our review or the scope of our project is the market comparison and where you fall, and it's not staffing, and so I wouldn't be able to respond to that. For the central administration support, this is your non-campus clerical support jobs. Overall, 95% of market, and the structure is at 95%. And this is another, so this is a group of jobs where the adjustment to the structure, we're making a little bit stronger this year. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we come back and we tweak areas now, knowing that we can see where we really need to go in and make some adjustments. And then campus administration support. These are your clerical and your educational aides, 2% above market, and then 1% above at your market structure. So ending with your classified positions, overall 98% and 100% of market. So basically what this tells us is the structures are still good except for some areas. And those are the areas that are kind of like the focus, and then we just continue to make the adjustments. And as long as we continue to maintain, just like any system, it'll continue to look like this. If we stop, then we may lose more ground. So moving forward with recommendations, basically it's consider the pay increase models, which we will be presenting. Where you've realigned the structures, made some tweaks and some adjustments to make sure that those range midpoints are connected to the market values for the jobs within those pay grades. And then, similar to what's going on across the state for bus drivers are basically a challenge for many school districts. It's a job that it's hard to staff, it's hard to keep employees staffed, and so we have pulled the bus drivers into their own range and have actually increased or recommending the increase of the starting salary for your bus drivers from your current $12.82 an hour to $13.90 an hour. So that's basically kind of putting you in somewhat in the top tier of the lead for the entry rate for bus drivers, and hoping that will make it a little bit more competitive for the district to recruit and retain them. So the three models that we are presenting tonight, first model is a 2.5 general pay increase. The teacher model 1 has a $51,750 starting pay, which we'll be looking at shortly. That model is a $1,400 for all continuing teachers. Model 2 is a 2% general pay increase. Again, as I say, 2% general pay increase. It's primarily off of the range midpoint, and for your teachers, it's based on the average teacher salary in your market group. This is a $51,550 starting salary with a $1,100 pay increase for all your teachers. And then Model 3 is the most conservative at 1.5%, $51,250 starting, and that's an $850 pay increase for all your continuing teachers. This is what Model 1 would look like. This is the one with the $51,750 pay starting salary with a $1,400 pay increase. As we previously mentioned, the starting salary is set, and then the way to read this template here is your 0-year teacher would get the $1,400, and then would move to year 1 at the salary level of $52,150. And so your continuing teachers would make the same as the salary for your new hire teachers that you're bringing in based on their experience. What I want to make note of here is that this model here, you can see on the far right, basically moves the district from an overall at about 100% of market where you are to about 2% above market, and then at 1% towards the top. And basically recognizing that the market does move. It will move. We anticipate about 1.5 to 2% movement for the San Antonio area. So this 2% model, this 2.5% model will at least maintain your market median there. Then we have a 2% pay increase model. This is the $1,100 increase with a $51,550 starting salary. And overall, you can see here that we're about 1% above market at most of those 5-year intervals. And so likely this one we may drop about a point depending on what the overall market does. Your 1.5% is the $850 here, and we do have a few adjustments at the proposed 17, 18, 15 year and 16 year, as well as the 20 and the 21 year, and that's just to maintain at least that 1% above market at those key kind of 5-point junctures. This model, as I mentioned, while it's the most conservative, it would likely not maintain the current position that you have in the marketplace. We also have some other recommendations, which would include just ensure that all employees are paid at the range minimum. We did adjust ranges, and so if depending on which general pay increase you go with, if the increase is not enough to get an individual into the new range minimum, then an adjustment to the minimum would take place. We've also targeted some additional adjustments. We call these teacher pay equity adjustments, particularly for your instructional leaders who are in that teacher career path. This would be counselors, assistant principals. As we look at their pay, given the general pay increase and the proposed teacher schedule, we want to make sure that on a daily rate basis, their pay is not less than what they would be making as a teacher. And then for those positions where they've fallen below 90% of market, we are recommending an additional 1% of the range midpoint, just to try to get them closer to that 90% of market. So again, it's not to take them to 90% of market, it's just an additional 1% so that we don't get too far below that 90% of market.
So real quick, just to, so like for example, at 88, you're kind of trying to get at least right above 90.
That's correct, but at least to 90% of market.
All right, thank you.
Okay. And then we have equity adjustments for your non-exempt employees. These are your clerical paraprofessionals, and that would be for all the pay grades of your clerical paraprofessional. And then your classifieds, that's pay grades 1 to 3, and your bus drivers. And basically the way we do that peer equity is that we spread pay incrementally from the minimum to the midpoint over 20 years for your clerical paraprofessional. And basically we ensure that the pay based on the experience levels is at set rates of pay so that we can value the difference in the years and kind of protect that peer equity within the groups. So this is kind of the next phase in here. For your classified, we have that going for your jobs where we kind of see more change in jobs and turnover, and make sure that as people are being brought in, that internal equity is maintained. And so that's for pay grades 1 to 3 and your bus drivers. So we have the cost estimates here. The 2.5% increase, this was that $51,750 starting salary with that $1,400 teacher pay increase. We see here that the cost for this would be $2,673,638. This would include both the general pay increase and the adjustments, and this is a 2.7% increase to your current payroll budget.
Mr. Chair, so just to understand real quick, so previously you mentioned that 2.5 is about $1,400 for all teachers. So the $1,400 for all teachers, that would be the 1.5 million, correct?
Yes.
And then whatever adjustments depending on where they fall on the...
It may be that, maybe there was a step because we can do additional adjustments for under this model. So it may have been that there may be a pay data years issue that we have to make an adjustment to.
But the 1,400 that's encompassing the 1.5.
The 1.5.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The 2%, this is the $51,550 pay increase. And this is the $1,100 pay increase. And the total for this is $2,158,211. And you can see here the general pay increase cost plus those additional adjustments costs. So it's a 2.2% increase above your current payroll. Then lastly is the 1.5% general pay increase. And this is $1,720,000, 150. That's 1.7% increase to your current payroll budget. Any questions? Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to come back.
Thank you, yes, thank you for coming back.
Yes, Mrs. Scott, I don't know if Mr. Funes mentioned it, but, so all the additional professional, clerical, classified, that's also taking into account the, what is it, recommendation number 3?
Yes, the
That's combined?
incremental adjustments, the pure equity adjustments, yes. So all the costs, the different cost models, each 3 of them reflect the cost associated with making those adjustments for your clerical, para, and auxiliary, or classified employees.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Remember, classified is paid grades 1 through 3 in bus drivers.
Can we hear Mr. Hall's voice? I haven't heard him
Sure.
since last.
Come
You
on
can say something, Mr. Hall.
It was always a team.
It's great to be back, guys. We always like working with you guys.
All right, thank you, Mr. House.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Jones. I was just taking a back seat tonight. You know, I had a board meeting Monday night. I'm still trying to recover, so thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Evans? We're on page 11 now?
Yes, sir. You look at page 11. So we've taken the information as it's been presented by TASB and our recommendation. Again, given the uncertainty by the state, but also knowing that, again, mentioning that Austin yield and how that's been able to help us, maybe with some of the efforts that are going to be made with the alignments that we're doing to advertise our school district more, to have more of our students stay in our school district. But starting off with the year, and again, like I said, you know, not knowing what the state's going to do on public funding, the recommendation this evening, or at least a starting point, is the 1.5% increase. So with that, that gives us a cost, as they mentioned earlier, $1.7 million here. And so the coming slides is, we can go on to our next agenda item, and I can show you the impact on how it has on our fund balance. And then this way, it's information for you to digest. You've got the report that TASB presented. We're going to meet again on June the 6th. So, you know, no final decisions being made this evening, but at least what you'll leave with is, you know, what kind of impact this will have. I can tell you that the cost differences between each of the recommendations is approximately $438,000. So the cost difference between a 1.5 and a 2% is an added $438,000. Of course, as we all know, that's a recurring cost. Once you give increases, you have to maintain those increases every year thereafter. And so the difference between a 1.5 and a 2.5, then of course basically doubles. It's $938,000. But the next budget item that we want to present, and as we mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, was following up on the board's direction and working with the superintendent to provide that incremental increase to the contribution, to the health insurance contribution. As we started several years back, the requirement was to provide at a minimum $225 per month for that contribution. Back for the plan year 2016, a recommendation was made close to the end of the year of 2015 was to add another $31.50 to that contribution. So that was a cost of $718,000. Again, these are recurrent costs, but these are costs the district made in order to assist the employees in this rising health insurance cost environment. The next item then was providing, as what we're experiencing right now in the plan year of 2017, this year that we're in, I'm sorry, and this should say 2017. So we increased it by $18.50 to bring us to an even monthly amount of $275,000. To do that $18.50, that added to the recurring cost of $410. These are currently built in the budget that we have right now. So this evening's new additional proposed increase is to increase the current monthly contribution by $25, which is then brings the total contribution to $300. The additional cost for that is $570. So when we look in the next slide after this, we'll show you, what impact the budget has on those budgeted items and the salary wage increase, the health insurance additional contribution. But what we do look at is, what are the monies that we call that are coming in that we call revenues, and then what are our basic operating costs. And so when you take all that into consideration, basically your bottom line is we have a deficit, and we know that deficit existed because 2 years ago we started on this plan to try to use this fund balance that has been building up and try to use it to not only to support the students but also support our staff. So then recapping where we're at and starting with the deficit of $3.2 million, we talked about those teacher allotments. The 2 that were reduced in the elementary, the 3 that we're adding for the secondary to be compliant, that's a cost of $57,000. Then we looked at the early college high school, the Jewel Witzel, and those positions, that's a cost of $199. Then we covered the realignments of the existing staff, our GT program, our bilingual facilitator, looking at what we did with Title II programs, and then looking at the adjustment on the communications part, actually brought in a savings of $199. So basically, these kind of offset each other. So the main cost that we're looking at is what we called, what was presented as far as the salary and wage increases and the health insurance. So to this deficit, basically when you add these 2 up, and that $57,000, that's what gives us our deficit. So we're at $5.6 million budget deficit, but then again, this $25.2 million, that amount again is above the $25 million that we've got set aside for 2.5 months of operations. So again, we're preserving that amount, which was the board's intent to try to make sure that we show financial stability with the district, for the district, which reflects well whenever we do bond issue. That has a big impact. And so that's what's given us our AA+ rating that we currently have. So in going through this year, then of course you have a deficit, and so your net amount and your fund balance is 19.5. So like we did last year, we extended this out to show what's the impact and how is that draining our fund balance. So I know these numbers are small on the screen, but in front of you on each of your handouts you can see the numbers clear. But I mean, the thing to look at on this presentation on this slide is in particular the white area. Because as we go through each year and we look at our fund balance, the area in green is what supports, that's the added, the available fund balance that we've got that I talked about earlier to try to maintain our operations. This orange area here, that's the $25 million that we want to maintain each year and yet utilize what we've got here in the green. The white then represents as we incur a deficit. Well, if we continue operations, we continue using the same formulas that we have right now because of the uncertainty and not knowing what the state's going to be presenting, then of course, we're going to continue with a deficit. But then if we look at, when you go for 17-18, again, the remaining amount is the 19.6 that I pointed out on the previous slide. And then when we look at the next year, 18-19, the white gets bigger all the way through 19-20 and 20-21. And so at this point in 2021, then we start encroaching in on what we're going to have available. It's not until 21-22 when we start dipping into the 25 million. Now, what I need to caution everyone, and we all need to keep in mind, is that we're using our current funding formulas to base on what we have currently by the state and the current, as I mentioned earlier, that Austin yield. So as property values increases, especially in Austin, then that actually only goes to benefit what the district can generate in revenues. the efforts that we make in our ADA certainly can bring in additional monies. But this is more of just a projection of planning of, you always want to know what's the impact going to have on the future. And so this slide presents that, but then we think about these other things that can potentially impact it. So again, knowing that the presentation was made on the salaries and wage increases, if we were to look at going up higher, then you look at that increase. If we do 2%, it's $438,000. You multiply that over 5 years, basically that gets almost to $2 million. So instead of having 23.3 in the sergeant this last year, basically we're down to 21. So again, then that's taking away any kind of the factors that I just mentioned. So that gives you where we're at on our budget, the resources that we have available that we're calculating based on the information that we have right now, and then looking at the kinds of things that the adjustments that we're making in order to continue operations and better serve our students. The next area is the tax rate. And in particular, I need to point out, and we had this issue or the situation, I believe a couple of years ago or 3 years ago, where as your property values go up, your debt's going to remain a certain amount. And so if your values go up, then you're going to generate more tax dollars. So you don't need that same tax rate. And so when we looked at what our values are, and I'll show it on the slide after this, we can actually have an INS rate of 0.3499. The difference between that and maintaining a current rate of where we're at right now of 0.3588 is a difference of 0.0089, basically 1 cent. What that means to the average homeowner, the taxable value. Now remember, this is $48,000, but then your regular house value, you're getting an exception of $25,000. So that's close, basically what we're saying here. A house value of a value of $73,000 minus the $25,000, the taxable amount is for it. What it means, basically, the taxpayers are having to pay, they would only be saving $4.30. The reason I'm pointing this out is because, as I said, 3 years ago, we had an issue like this where we looked at something what we call excess tax collections. And what that allows the district to do is that if we're able to, if the board approves the district to keep the tax rate at where it's at 0.358, and basically what we need to cover our debt is a rate of this much, then you can see if we leave it at 3588, we're going to have excess collections. That's what this represents right here. So what we did back a few years back is we said, with this excess collection, what can we do in order to reduce our debt, have some cost savings? And when we look at the current bonds that we have outstanding, there's a portion of our bonds that we can use this excess collection, keep our tax rate at 3588, and pay off some bonds early. These bonds would come due on August the 19th. And so basically, here's what we would set aside with that excess tax collection. When we pay off this bond, if we didn't pay it off, we're going to be paying this much in interest until the bond would come due on 2034. So what this does is it provides a savings to the district because it's able to use its tax collection rate at 3588, bringing that money, do an early payout. But secondly, and as important, it maintains that tax effort. So that if the board ever considers another bond issue, it looks at where's your tax rate at that time. So if the district went opposite and continued to, as your property values go up, your tax rate goes down, then the amount of monies that you can generate through EDA will be reduced because your efforts come down. So what we're trying to do here is not only bring in savings to the district of $92,000, but also what we always, and we've been hearing this a lot, is maintain our bonding capacity. So the recommendation would for approval of tax rate on June 6th would be to keep our tax rate at $1.17 for maintenance and operation, we're maxed out on that. But also to maintain our INS tax rate at 0.3588, to have an approved tax rate of then 1.5288.
Just real quick, Mr. Hernandez, let's not get too excited. I don't know how much our values will go up, because like most people like myself, we're gonna protest those values going up, and I'm gonna keep it at where it's at this year, if at all possible.
And what that does, it's oddly enough how all this works, because then that keeps our values low, so then we're a low wealth district, and so that just generates additional state dollars. The way to help us.
I'm doing the right
way
thing.
to-
Do whatever you wanna do.
The way you're helping our district, because you're keeping our low wealth, but then we gotta get more ADA to make it even lower. So then going to, what we plan, as I mentioned earlier, we plan to have a June 6th meeting that works with the board schedule. Work session, but also a formal meeting, so we can have an approved tax rate, as we just mentioned. So that way we can do an official publication of when the board would approve, what we're planning on having the board approve the formal budget with a budget hearing on June 27th. The rest of the dates are just letting the board know is when certified values come out and when the board makes a final tax rate adoption, which is on August the 21st. So, Mr. President, members of the board, this concludes the presentation for the budget work session this evening.
Richard, I know a lot of work goes into these presentations, so thank you so much, and thank you to Cassie. Very valuable information. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Moving on with the agenda, item number 6.
Move to adjourn.
I have a motion by Mr. Booth, second. Second, Ms. Gallego, any discussion? All those in favor? Ayes, carried, motion carried.